Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. My guest today is Shashi Tharoor, who a couple of hours earlier filed his nomination to stand as a candidate for election as Congress President. How confident is he of winning? What are the changes he wants to bring about in the Congress party? And if he does become Congress President, what will be the vision the party offers the people of India? Those are the issues I shall discuss today. Let's see how much Shashi Tharoor reveals. Shashi Tharoor, you've thrown your hat into the ring. Tell me honestly, how confident are you of winning?
Look, one doesn't enter a race without feeling one has a chance of victory, but I recognize that the odds are long, and the fact is that being the underdog doesn't really matter if you have the courage of your convictions. I'm prepared to stick my neck out for this, and I've done so.
Now, before you made up your mind to stand, you spoke to Sonia Gandhi, you spoke to Rahul Gandhi, you spoke to Priyanka Gandhi, and you say that they assured you that they were not going to field a favoured candidate surreptitiously or unofficially. And you said at your press conference this afternoon that you believe them. Are you being naive?
Are you asking me to doubt the word of my party president? And I just can't do that. I've been told something. I will take it exactly as I've been told.
I'll tell you why, in fact, there should be doubt. Because if they were going to support someone surreptitiously and unofficially, they wouldn't reveal it to you.
Now, the fact of the matter is there is an election going on. In that election, there are apparently 3 candidates, not just 2. And I hope that I will be able to use this election process to put my ideas for the party forward to the people. Let me stress that I only got into this because a large number of party workers and colleagues telephoned me spontaneously, urging me to do it.
All of that is beyond dispute, and I applaud your actually standing. The question that I'm raising is, why do you believe the Gandhis when they say that they will not surreptitiously support an anointed favourite candidate? It's in their interest to do so. It's their way of retaining a hold and influence.
Look, all I'm saying is I've had 3 conversations with the 3 of them. I've been given certain assurances. Those have been conveyed to the press by the party. It's not just me. And in fact, when Digvijay went and collected his nomination papers, he said he was told exactly the same thing.
Because it suits the Gandhis to repeat it again and again.
Good. Well, in that case, I've heard it and I take their word for it.
Let me put it like this. Shortly after you filed your nomination, a similar set of papers were filed by Mallikarjun Kharge. The media, right across the board, is absolutely convinced that in fact he is the Gandhis' favoured candidate, despite whatever assurance was given to you or to Digvijay Singh. And this is corroborated by the fact that when he went to file his candidature today, he was supported by probably every single leader in Delhi. The statement he made thereafter was made on the premises of the Congress party. And most importantly of all, I heard it on TV, and he began by saying, "Aaj maine Congress party ke aur se nomination file kiya." Congress party ke aur se clearly suggests that he's got their backing and the dice are loaded against you.
You could ask him that rather than ask me. I'm not responsible for what Mr. Kharge has to say. All I can say, look, is the fact is there are 9,100 odd people who have to make a decision on this by voting on the 17th of October. Ultimately, if they vote for the candidates that they wish to, they'll get the leadership they deserve.
You've done a credible thing, and I'm saying it for the second time, in standing because you made this election believable and real. There is a real candidate in addition to Kharge. The question is this: the Gandhis would have known that if you stand, the election will become credible. They would have wanted you to stand for that very purpose. Are they cleverly using you to make an election where their favorite man gets elected, but it looks credible because Shashi is competing as well?
Well, look, I mean, these are all surmises, analyses that you as journalists are entirely entitled to make. What I'm doing nonetheless is to use this opportunity to put forward a set of ideas which have been fashioned, frankly, out of comments made by party colleagues over the years and share them with the party membership at large.
I very much want to talk to you about your ideas, how you want to change the Congress party, and more importantly also, the vision Congress will offer India for president. And I'll come to that in a moment's time. But let me ask you one more question. Given the way the dice has been probably deliberately loaded against you, might you consider withdrawing?
No, I don't think so, Karan, simply because, there are 60 colleagues from around the country who have signed my nomination papers, and I really can't let them down. If indeed, for example, some of them shared your concerns that this was a battle against an official nominee and that they would be risking their own future in the party, I can imagine that they would really have taken a personal risk to support me, if that's the case.
And you need to be loyal to them.
I need to be loyal to them, and I will be loyal to them.
And again, that's a credible thing. Let's then carry on this interview on the assumption that you do win, you do become Congress president.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I'm going to put forward as good an
if
account of myself
if
as I
I'm
can.
going to solicit your views on how you change the party and how you will perhaps offer a new vision to the country, then it has to be on the assumption you become Congress president. And the first issue I want to raise is this: if you are Congress president, what will be Rahul Gandhi's role in the party? And secondly, who will decide it, you as president or Rahul Gandhi himself?
I think it'll have to be a process of mutual discussion and consultation. He's a former president for one thing, and so is his mother, and he has an extraordinarily charismatic and effective sister. I think the family would need to be involved in the Congress party from the Congress party's own interests. It would be rather foolish of us to throw away an asset that has such an extraordinary pedigree, whose DNA, as it were, is deeply intertwined with that of the party, and who at the same time continue to have an enormous appeal to large sections of the voting public. So we need to find a way that they're comfortable with, that they can be actively involved in the Congress's affairs.
This is a special concession for Rahul Gandhi because he is a Gandhi. No one else who needs a role in the party when you're president would decide for themselves what it would be. You would decide as president. But because Rahul is a Gandhi, you'll consult him and you'll do it mutually. This is a concession to him.
I think even with my staff, as people who know about my stewardship of the All India Professionals Congress will tell you, I tend not to dictate. I believe very much in consultative management. That's the method I developed in my working life with the United Nations.
I'll tell you what.
And while we are in a very different environment, it's the decent way to proceed. Let's see what people are comfortable with, what they believe they can do. If they decline something merely because they don't feel they're up to it and you believe they are, then you can challenge them to live up to your expectations.
I'll tell you what the problem is.
You will have a problem if you give people responsibilities that they're not able to fulfill.
But the question is not Rahul being unable to fulfill the responsibility you give him. He may not think it's important enough for him to accept. He may want a responsibility that's greater than you're willing to concede. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because P. Chidambaram, in an interview to PTI, and he repeated it in his Indian Express column shortly thereafter, has made a clear distinction between the president of the Congress party and the leader of the Congress party. And what he was saying is someone like Shashi or even Mallikarjun Kharge could be president of the party, but Rahul will always be leader. Do you accept that distinction between president and leader?
It's a distinction that exists or has existed in specific contexts. For example, Mahatma Gandhi was the leader of the Congress party during the nationalist movement, even though he wasn't the president. And you could probably argue that when we were in government, Jawaharlal Nehru was the de facto leader of the Congress party, even though there were other people who were president, and similarly with Indira Gandhi. So there are precedents, but it's unusual for an opposition party to have an arrangement like that. And I think, again, the constitution of the Congress party doesn't actually provide for the Congress president to report to anybody else. So I think the party has to be a party of leaders in the plural, and certainly there's no question that any member of the Gandhi family, by virtue of who they are, let's face it, we can't get away from history and pedigree, will automatically have a leadership position in the party that party members would welcome and recognize.
Let me pick up on that sentence that the Congress party doesn't have a constitution where the president is answerable to anybody.
Yes.
That is
Answerable to the members.
That is precisely the point Mr. Chidambaram was actually throwing into doubt. This is what he wrote about how he sees the role of the president vis-a-vis the role of the leader. And I'm quoting him. The leader's task is to provide leadership to the people, share a vision with them and inspire them to vote for the party. The president's main function is to fix the nuts and bolts of the organization, keep it in good repair and make it a fighting fit election machine. That clearly subordinates the president to the leader. The leader is the visionary. The president is a sort of nuts and bolts maintenance engineer.
And well, I think that would be a very limited understanding of the role of the president. I'm sure that Mr. Chidambaram would recognize that others are entitled to different views of such a role.
The question is,
Certainly,
what is the view held by the Gandhis? Do they agree with these views?
Certainly, well, I don't know, they haven't said so, but certainly if this were the understanding, I don't think that the vast level of national interest we've seen in this election would actually exist. There would in fact be a very different level. I think no one's going to have the kinds of media attention and so on for a nuts and bolts engineer that we are seeing in the country today.
So these sort of views don't upset you or even worry you?
No, look, I mean, the fact is no one in the party, I think, has a monopoly on deciding how the party functions. If somebody is party president, that comes with a certain amount of authority, and I'm sure that the president should have the ability, by the time he or she gets to be president, to figure out his or her role, its strengths, its limitations, and its relationship with others.
Can I ask you this? If you become Congress president, will the last word be yours? Or will it be Rahul Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi, perhaps Priyanka Gandhi? Will the buck stop with you?
I should expect so, but it also depends on the issue. I mean, I do believe very much in consultative leadership. One of the things that animated some of the frustrations of the party over the last couple of years has been a sort of absence of consultation and discussion, or the perception of that, before certain important decisions were made. So if you are going to actually discuss matters with the top leadership, I don't see how in any way the Gandhis would be excluded from such a discussion.
No, it's not excluding them. It's do they have a veto?
It depends on the issue. We'll have to see. Look, this is very hypothetical, Karan, and this is frankly so hypothetical that it's not really worth talking about.
The only
Right
hypothesis here is that you will be president. If you do become president, this will be a critical issue you will face, which is why it's worth discussing.
It will evolve in practice. I can't think of a presidency of anywhere, whether a company or a country or a party, where every single problem could have been anticipated in advance and settled. I'm sorry, you will have to work in a situation, talk to people, find your way forward, and often this evolves. The answer for perhaps month one may not be the same as the answer for month 17.
You'll feel your way through the relationship with the Gandhis, and it will evolve with experience and practice.
Exactly.
Let's then talk about how you might run the Congress party if you become Congress president. Now, several Pradesh Congress committees have passed resolutions authorizing the incoming president to nominate PCC chiefs as well as AICC members, and that is clearly a breach of your constitution. So if you are president, will you insist that PCC chiefs and AICC members are elected, or will you accept this nomination because they've given you power to do what you want? Which of the two?
No, I would rather not have the power to do what I want on that basis. And I think that, frankly, as you say, it's not consistent with the Constitution, which lays out very specific procedures. But equally, I think it's actually reflective of a genuine problem of over-centralization in our party. I'd like the era of the one-line resolution authorizing the Congress president to take every decision behind us. I think we really have to now bring the party, not just cast upon it the sunlight of internal democracy, which the party is doing now, but also bring it into an era in which some of these things will actually get down to the grassroots, where a block president, a district president, and a state president will have genuine authority commensurate with those titles.
So then let me ask specifically, if you are Congress president, will you stop the practice of PCCs or state legislature parties passing one-line resolutions, leaving the choice of the parliamentary leader to the president? Will you stop that?
Absolutely.
And therefore, legislature party leaders under Shashi Tharoor will be elected by the MLAs?
That's right.
In every instance?
Well, they will, if in exceptional circumstances there is a need for some adjustment, you've got to be creative and flexible, but the basic principle will be absolutely that once an election is won, the MLAs in a secret ballot should decide who their leader should be. And if there's more than one candidate, as they normally should be, politicians are entitled to pursue their own ambitions, then at that point, we'll have a central observer going there along to watch the process.
But it will be an election.
But it will be an election.
That's a very important change, and I'll underline that for the audience because it is a break with the way the Congress has functioned for decades. Let's pursue this sense of how you're going to change Congress.
I should say there were exceptions. There were certainly moments when the Congress did function this way. The famous example being the Indira Gandhi-Morarji Desai standoff in 1967.
That's what I'm saying. It hasn't functioned like that for decades.
For decades.
Let's come to something else. The Congress party has a working committee. Your constitution requires that 12 of them should be elected.
That's right.
An election hasn't been held for over 20 years. Will an election be held under Shashi Tharoor as president?
That's already in my manifesto for change, and I certainly intend that we follow the letter of the Constitution in this regard.
So there will be elections for 12 members of the CWC.
Exactly, and the president gets to appoint 11 to make up for any inadequate representation of important sections of our society. For example, if the
you won't let the Gandhis change your mind on this.
No. Frankly, this is exactly what the Constitution requires, and I really would like to uphold the Constitution.
But it's not what the Gandhis did for the last 20 years.
Well, I think the party has functioned in a certain way. It worked well at one point, and we won the elections
but now it needs
2004 and 2009. But we've gone through a rather rough time since then, and it looks like it's the right moment to have a detailed look and overhaul the way in which we're working.
What about the Congress Parliamentary Board? It's virtually ceased to exist. Will you revive it?
Well, certainly. Again, it's provided for in the Constitution. And it should be constituted out of members of the working committee and take some fairly crucial decisions. Of course, the Constitution assumes that there will be enough members of the working committee who are elected members of parliament to constitute such a board. And we'll have to make sure that we perform well enough in elections to be able to do that.
But that apart,
I certainly think so, yeah.
But people listening to this interview up to now will say to themselves that Shashi Tharoor intends fairly major changes in the way the party is functioned. One-line resolutions will cease. MLAs will be electing their legislature party leader. 12 members of the CWC will be elected as the Constitution requires. The Constitution Parliamentary Board, which has virtually ceased to exist, will be revived and recreated.
And we can add more to that. The District Congress President's appointments will not need to be approved in Delhi anymore. We just let the Pradesh Congress Committee chiefs exercise the authority to run their states as they should and hold them accountable if they go wrong.
And this, therefore, will suggest to people that what he's really saying is he's going to do away with what's called the high command culture.
Absolutely. So the idea very much is to empower the grassroots of the party to decentralize its management. And I believe that it's really time for this to taking place in our party. And that's what I'm putting forward to the Congress Party voters. If a majority don't agree with me, then we'll continue. My argument has always been that business as usual isn't going to get us anywhere.
Quite right. You're the candidate for change.
I'm very much the candidate for change.
But can I interrupt? I just want to repeat what you said because I think it's so important. When I said to you that you're giving the impression you're going to do away with the high command culture, you said absolutely. That was your answer.
That's right. And I think the phrase itself was an unfortunate one, which is redolent of the sort of the Nazi era in Germany. I don't think it was ever appropriate for a democratic party in a democracy like India to have a high command. But I think the idea behind that phrase, which perhaps the media foisted upon the party, the idea behind the phrase is indeed a central authority at the top of the party, the leadership. Today, I'm just suggesting the time has come to decentralize the leadership.
Absolutely. And do away with the high command culture. That's very important because that one word and the fact that you're doing away with it suggests that there's a major change in the offing if you become Congress president.
I do say that I'm the candidate of change. I think, in fact, the entire point of contesting this election is to put forward ideas for change and see if they meet with the approval of the party.
But you made that as a big issue today in the press conference you held after you filed your nomination. You repeatedly said that you were the candidate for change. You seem to characterize Mr. Kharge as the candidate for continuity. But I want to put a contradiction to you. You're the candidate for change, and in many ways you spelled out in this interview the sort of changes we can expect. But there's one area where there won't be change. The Gandhis will remain a very important influence. However, they will have no office in the party, but their influence in the party will be so large that you will even consult them about the sort of role they should play. So is this really change, or is it change with the Gandhis still staying?
No, look at the extraordinary impact they have upon the nation. Look right now at Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo Yatra, which is going to continue beyond the election of the Congress president. The Bharat Jodo Yatra, frankly, has attracted literally millions of people's interest. We've seen lakhs of people turning up on the roads, curiosity, excitement, approval, enthusiasm, literally up and down the route that I've witnessed.
So the Gandhis are people you cannot do without because of their charismatic star value.
It would be foolish for the Congress party to throw away one of its biggest assets.
Then let me ask you this question, because we're talking about the sort of change you're going to bring, not just to the structure of the Congress party, but the way it thinks in response to developments. How do you view the behavior of the Rajasthan legislature party? Do you see it as an attempt to further internal party democracy? Because MLAs were demanding that they should be the ones to decide who will be their leader. Or do you see it as a fracturing of high command authority, because the incumbent president's authority and diktat was successfully defied? Which of the two?
Well, Karan, I have to say that having not been involved in that entire imbroglio, having been completely unaware of whatever promises may or may not have been made behind closed doors, whatever undertakings given and not maintained, or whatever, it's just irresponsible of me to comment. It's being handled by the Congress president. I leave it to her, and no doubt we'll find out in due course.
Absolutely, and I'm not asking you to comment on details, but what the MLAs in Rajasthan were doing was very much in keeping with what you said earlier, that we will do away with the one-line resolution. In other words, the MLAs were saying, we are MLAs, it's our right to choose our leader, and we will define who that person should be.
On the other hand, it's equally the party's right to say that you who are going to contest for the party presidency would have to give up your existing position. So, in other words, there was...
but I'm not talking about giving up Gehlot's second position at all. I'm simply saying, how do you view the behavior of the legislature party? Was it furthering internal democracy because they wanted to choose the leader, or was it defiance?
In the abstract, the principle that a legislature party should choose its own leader is one I've already affirmed. So, I have no difficulty in the abstract. I just don't know the specific circumstances to apply that principle in this particular case. There may have been undertakings given that were not actually maintained.
One more question about how you run the Congress party before I talk to you about the vision you have for the Congress party and what it will stand for if Shashi Tharoor is president. How will you energize, revitalize the party? How will you breathe new life into it? Because the truth is, it often looks like a tired party. At times it even looks like a dormant party. How will you wake it up? Because it's more than just structural changes. You need to put spirit into it.
You know, Karan, there's a lot to be done for the party, but above all, I think if you can actually communicate to the party workers that they matter, that they have access, that their views will be heard, and that within the levels of the positions they have, they will have real authority, I think already you're going to see a transformation in people's attitudes. Part of the difficulty for many, many workers is they are the executors of decisions handed down from on high, with which, frankly, they have little, awareness because they were not consulted in the making of it.
So involving them in decisions will revitalize the party.
That's going to be one important thing. The other thing, frankly, in terms of the way in which the party functions, is that we do need to restore the idea of politics as a sort of social work. We're not just a machine to fight elections every 5 years. We've got to be able to have a connect with the people between elections. Now, I've seen this at its best in my own constituency in Kerala, and I believe we ought to replicate this elsewhere in the country. I mean, I'll give you a couple of examples. A poor old lady doesn't know how to fill in a ration card application form. A Congress worker helps her do it. Somebody else has had her home broken into, but the local cops will not record the complaint because the Gunda is affiliated with the ruling party. So the Congress worker goes, finds out, gives some help, calls the MP, in this case me, and says,
you provide critical services for people where they need them.
The sorts of things that in an ideal situation, a local government ought to be able to provide, but very often doesn't. We can provide to people, and by maintaining that connection, the party worker becomes an integral part of that social life. And in due course, when the party worker goes and asks for a vote, there are reasons beyond the actual political appeal or the manifesto of the party. There are reasons why people will turn to the party.
Let me put a problem to you. I'm absolutely certain that the BJP is doing everything that you're saying Congress should do as well. And because the BJP has a better, firmer bigger organizations, they're probably doing it more effectively. So you're not doing something new. The BJP is already doing it.
Well, the problem is this is something we probably pioneered. In fact, I'm quite sure we pioneered.
But haven't done for a long time.
Way back for a long time. But in some parts of the country, we haven't done it for a long time. In some parts, we still do. And Kerala is a very good example of a place where I've seen this in action.
So providing these services and also involving people in decision making from the very bottom levels upwards, you believe will breathe new life into the party?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's then finally come to what I suppose is perhaps the most important part of this interview. What will the Congress party stand for under Shashi Tharoor? What is the vision that you will offer the country?
Well, I think the sort of tried and tested values and principles and ideology of the party are not in question. I believe very firmly in the notion of inclusive India, which the Congress has always stood for, even if not under that label. An inclusive India is one where, frankly, everyone is included, irrespective of their language, their region, their religion, their states, their place of birth, and all of that. If you're an Indian citizen, you have the same rights, you have the same claim on the country and on the Congress party as anyone else, which is not true of the ruling party, the BJP. Secondly, I would also very much insist on standing up for the human rights of our people. The Congress party, as part of the UPA government, was able to introduce a rights-based framework into the lives of ordinary people. Everything from the right to information, the right to employment through Manrega, the right to food, the right to education. These rights constitute a way of seeing our citizenry that's very different from the BJP sort of Labharti concept, where they're basically giving welfare handouts and going around the next day saying, you've got to be grateful to Mr. Modi for having given them to you.
Can I interrupt? From the point of view of the person receiving the welfare, does it matter that it's being given because it's your right to get it, or it's being given because Mr. Modi wants to claim credit for doing so?
As far as
the recipient is concerned, what matters is that he or she get it, and they're getting it in a fairly substantially enhanced way under Mr. Modi. All that's missing is that they're not being told it's your right to have it. But that's an abstract concept for people.
No, that's not entirely right. And certainly, for example, when we had, for example, for Manrega, when we said you're entitled to 100 days, you tell me under the BJP how many people in this country from poor rural families have been able to get 100 days of paid employment. How many were given that? How many were paid on time? I'm sorry to say that simply the record is not inspiring.
So you will make rights function better and more effectively.
Absolutely. And finally, we've got to say one very simple thing to the people of India. Are you better off because the Modi government's been ruling than you were 8.5 years ago? Have you got a job now that you didn't have then?
What makes you think that the answer will be no?
Because I've tried this.
Yes.
I've tried this.
In Kerala?
Most people tell me no. No, not just in Kerala. I've spoken to people wherever I go.
And they've told you they're worse off under Modi than they were?
For the most part. I mean, there are lots of people who voted for Mr. Modi in 2014 because they thought they were going to get jobs coming down the pike. They haven't. And they still don't have jobs 8 years later. We've got the highest unemployment rate ever recorded. That was 2 years ago. There's been some improvement since, but not much. We've got a horrendously high rate of inflation. And of course, the lowest rate for the rupee that Mr. Modi made such an issue of in his 2014 campaign. So if you look at all of these things, you're seeing a government whose performance has been sorely lacking. You've had demonetization,
and you can
bad idea implemented badly.
You're saying Congress can capitalize on all of this?
Because we frankly have a better track record we can point to, which I agree didn't save us in 2014, but which has been looking better and better in hindsight as we've seen demonetization, the botched rollout and implementation of GST and all of this.
Let's talk about that, because I think this is a very, very important part of the new vision that you will be offering if you become Congress president. And I'm going to start by quoting what you wrote in The Hindu literally just 2 weeks ago. The success of the Bharatiya Janata Party in foregrounding Hindutva as its leitmotif makes it all the more urgent for Congress to define and shape its message. To my mind, there can only be one of inclusive India. And you said that a moment ago just now as well. The question is, how do you define this message? Nehru chose to do it by distancing himself from religion and stressing secularism. Rahul Gandhi stressed secularism, but he also presented himself as a Janeodhari Brahmin, and he didn't fail to drop by at every temple when he was campaigning. What will Shashi's approach be if Shashi Tharoor is president?
Well, those who follow me in Kerala politics know that I've already demonstrated my approach. I go to temples, I go to churches, I go to mosques, And if there's a synagogue handy, I'll go to one too, or a Gurudwara. There isn't one in Kerala. But I do that as well. I deeply respect all religions. There is a difference in Sanskrit and Hindi between the notion of dharma nirpekshata, keeping yourself distant from religion, and pant nirpekshata, which is actually trying to draw no distinction amongst different faiths. And to my mind, what we're seeing really today is we're encouraging a profusion of religion simply because in the country, most people are religious minded. It matters to Indians.
But you know
so you can't deny the reality matters to them, but you want to tell them that neither will your religion give you any advantages in this society, nor will it detract from your rights in this society. Basically, your religion is your personal business. You pray as you see fit. We will respect you for respecting your own faith, but do not expect that to give you any special rights or privileges. That, to my mind, is actually the Indian understanding of secularism rather than the Western understanding of secularism, which is distancing
without
from
doubt.
religion.
But the problem is, once again, it's a very abstract concept. Will people, ordinary voters, understand the distinction between dharma nirpekshata and pant nirpekshata? Because it's a fairly difficult one for most people to grapple with. It's not the easy message that politicians look for when they're trying to win votes. You're asking people to understand an abstract concept, which you do because you've written on Hinduism, but will they?
I think we can explain it we can explain it also in the context of their real lives. In other words, if tomorrow we have a party going around saying, we stand up for the rights of Hindus, we will tell our voters we stand up for the rights of Hindus as well as Muslims, as well as Christians, as well as anybody else, including atheists.
This is better than the Nehruvian approach, which is to be almost atheistic and distant completely from religion.
He was an agnostic. I think it's fairly clear that Mr. Nehru didn't have much patience for the practitioners of religion. He treated them with respect. He was a decent, cultured gentleman, but he didn't. He actually wrote in one of his famous letters to a Muslim friend. He wrote saying that he wanted Maulvis and Sadhus far away from Indian politics.
That won't be Shashi Tharoor's attitude.
No, I think, you see, what my attitude as a politician in Kerala has been is I must show respect for that which my voters respect. If something is sacred to my voters, I believe it is appropriate that I go and show it respect. And very often, voters and party workers have invited me into their favorite temple or mosque or whatever because it matters to them. It would be churlish of me to spurn that, and so I go to their temple and their mosque.
I understand. All I want to underline is that it's an abstract concept that you're trying to put across, and how you put it across will probably matter hugely because it's not an easy one for people to grapple with. Let me come to a second challenge, because Hindutva is clearly the first. The second is, how do you convince the 81% of voters who didn't vote for your party in 2014 and 2019 to do so now? And once again, you talked about this in that article that you wrote for The Hindu. You said, this would require a leader who looks beyond history to speak to the aspirations of young India. Two questions. How are you going to do it? And what will be the message to young India?
Well, first of all, I think what some people suggested, and I don't really like being particularly modest, but some people suggested that in many ways I sort of embody some of the aspirations of many people in young India. I came from an ordinary middle-class family. I didn't have any great patronage. I had no political background or wasn't the son of a minister or anything else. My father was a salaried professional who himself had fought his way up through education. And he the biggest asset he could pass on to the three of us children was education. And so whatever I've accomplished was because of my dint of hard work in school, in college, in university, and subsequently.
So you'll hold yourself out as an example of what is possible, and if I can do it, so can you.
That's exactly right.
But you'll be saying to people, start aspiring and start looking upwards to the fact that you can change your life if you make the effort.
But at the same time, as a party and as a government, since we hope one day to be back in government, we would want to facilitate the fulfillment of such aspirations.
How?
That's very important.
How?
In the enabling framework, the tax system, the encouragement and subventions from governments, training opportunities.
So on all these, Congress will be taking positions which you will make clear in further detail if you become Congress president.
Exactly.
So in other words, you're talking about an enabling framework changing, the tax system changing, the very structure of government changing. Is that right?
Well, I think the basic structure of government, I think, will probably not be possible to change because it's there in the Constitution, and our Supreme Court has ruled that the basic structure can't be fiddled with. But when we speak of government, certainly we should also include in it the notion of governance. And the way we govern depends on what our political convictions are, the manifestos we've passed and got voted, the laws we bring into Parliament.
This is beginning to sound like minimum government, maximum governance.
except that Mr. Modi didn't implement it. He gave us that slogan, which was borrowed from American politics, but he implemented, unfortunately, maximum government in various ways of our life. The intrusion of the government into our lives is something I'd like to remove. I don't believe the government has any place in our kitchens, in our bedrooms, or our dining tables. But Mr. Modi's party does.
Will you also, and this is very interesting, remove the government or at least retreat the government from areas of economic performance where many people feel it ought not to be in the first place?
I agree, absolutely.
But those are things that your party has been very hesitant to do, if not reluctant to do.
You know,
in other words, remember the Avadi resolution? The socialistic
party
pattern
has
of
two
society?
legacies, Karan. It has the legacy of Avadi and the commanding heights of the economy, but it also has the legacy of 1991 and liberalization.
But when Nirmala Sitharaman came up with a whole slew of industries to privatize and retreating from probably all sectors, your party was very critical. You're sounding very different to that.
Well, I mean, personally, I have my own economic philosophy, but as a party leader, I would have to run it past the rest of my colleagues and try and take them along with me. I mean, the fact
Won't
is
that be a battle for you?
It could well be, but you know, if you're going to aspire to a job like this, you've got to be prepared to take on battles. I'm already fighting a battle right now to get elected. So if I am able to be successful in that, and I recognize it's a long shot, the next change then has got to be to take that spirit into other battles beyond the.
But you're saying again something very important. As Congress President, you will make every effort to change the thinking of your colleagues so that there's more room for enterprise, less room for state involvement in the running of industry, and as a result, more opportunity for aspirational India to achieve their ambitions.
Exactly.
That is a whole change in attitude that you're going to have to convince elderly congressmen who for 50 years have thought differently, but you're prepared to do that.
I think the party has to be a party of young India. Look, we're already 51, 52% below 25. How on earth can we not need to reflect, first of all, their hopes and aspirations, and secondly, build an India where they can actually succeed and thrive?
You used a wonderful phrase. The party has to be the party of young India. Under Shashi, Congress will be the party of young India.
Absolutely.
That's a whole change in direction almost.
Well, no, it was actually the party of young India under Rajiv Gandhi who built the bridge into the 21st
40
century.
years have passed
this morning,
since then.
Karan, when I left home after my prayers, I went to Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi in Rajghat and paid homage. And then I went to Rajiv Gandhi and I was trying to convey a message. This is the man who really built this bridge into the 21st century, introduced ideas of technology, communications and progress.
But Shashi, and this is the important point, Congress ceased to be Rajiv Gandhi's party when he died. And under Modi, the aspirations of young India have been kindled by Modi, not Congress. Now when you say Congress will be the party of young India, you're taking on that challenge full front.
I'm trying to revive the legacy of Rajiv Gandhi.
Two more quick questions and I'll let you go. You have a lot of experience as a UN diplomat in understanding foreign policy. Mm-hmm. Congress needs to take positions, even if it's in opposition, on the important foreign policy concerns of the day. So let me first ask you, how will your stand and approach on China and Pakistan differ from that of the Modi government?
Well, look, one thing that's got to be made very clear for any of us in the opposition in foreign policy, apart from the broad contours of policy, we are not privy to classified information. We don't know some of the stuff the government undoubtedly does know. We believe the government should have been much tougher on the Chinese. We believe that once they killed 20 of our soldiers, there was simply no going back. And we feel it's deplorable that business as usual and normal relations and increased trade. Actually, trade numbers went up in the 2 years since that
Very
tragedy.
substantially.
Very substantially. And that, to my mind, suggests a genuine flaw in the government's approach.
What about Pakistan?
Pakistan, you know, not talking is not much of a policy. There were good reasons for the government to suspend talking to Pakistan, but very clearly, the time could have come when we, in our own assessment, judged that the opportunities existed for opening it up. Right now, Pakistan, the government is too weak. There's an election around the corner. We don't want to get caught up in that. But there was a time, for example, when the government earlier was stable and they had an army chief who was sending all sorts of signals that they were interested in talking peace with us.
So this is a significant change in attitude to Pakistan, isn't it?
Yeah, but at the same time, this is my view. I'm not a party spokesman.
But you will be Congress president.
If I were to be, this is certainly the view that I'd take forward. When I chaired the External Affairs Committee of Parliament, we did write a report, the External Affairs Committee, which is a public document you can look up, that specifically called for greater people-to-people contact, for example.
The other big issue that you'll face as Congress president, where people will expect to hear an opinion from you, is the Ukraine crisis. Mm-hmm. Will you continue as Congress president the Modi government's policy of refusing to criticize Russia, or do you think that morally and politically, the world's largest democracy has a duty to take a clear stand when a sovereign nation is invaded.
Karan, what I think is already on the record, I spoke in Parliament on this very issue, and I made precisely the point.
But you weren't Congress president at the time. I'm asking what will be your stand when you are.
My principles don't change according to the position I hold. I think that it's important to understand that there were certain things that India has always stood for in world affairs that we were wrong to abandon at this particular time. Now that we have taken the position we have since the 24th of February, the question that arises is whether we can be a credible voice for peace. And privately, I have encouraged the government to take a more conciliatory stand.
But if you are Congress president, you will take the stand publicly?
Yes, I think on this there is, again, Karan, the danger with positing things into the future is this is a situation that evolves all the time. And as problems change and opportunities emerge, there are different opportunities. For example, if the government were to say...
You could be Congress president in under a month's time. The Ukraine crisis will not have disappeared.
Sadly.
People will look to you to find out what is your party's stand and is it different to the government's. And that's why I'm asking you this question. In a month's time, if you are president, will the voice of at least one Indian party be heard saying the invasion of Ukraine was wrong?
I think there's no question in my mind that the Ukraine invasion, and indeed any invasion of a sovereign state, is inadmissible under the UN Charter and in the principles of international relations that India has always upheld. So saying that is not a problem. The question is...
It has been for the government. The present government can't say it.
But where do we go from here? And I think now that the Indian government has established a certain position, before exhorting them to abandon it, we've got to see whether it can be leveraged into anything useful, like a useful mediating role, for example. The perception appears to have been that neither side is ready for mediation at this point.
And neither side, I think, is willing to accept Indian mediation. We may talk about it and offer it, but we know that neither side is accepting it. Let's be honest.
Well, I don't know, because frankly, there's a lot of conversations taking place behind closed doors that we don't know enough about right now. But I will say that on
the
foreign
mediation
policy,
that happened was done by the Turks. Let's be honest about it.
The Turks and the Israelis earlier, neither of whom succeeded. The UN then on the grain export deal from Odessa.
Again with Turkey playing a critical role.
That's right.
But let's move beyond Ukraine. I have time for just one last question, and I've deliberately left it to the end. If you become Congress president, you'll have to battle with the almost invincible image that Narendra Modi has created around him. He's extremely popular, he's a mesmerizing speaker, and he's untainted by the failures of his government. How will you as Congress president reduce that image to a manageable size so that in an election you can defeat him?
Well, we absolutely can reduce it for the simple reason that the extraordinary mesmerizing speeches have not been translated into action on the ground. That you can see that he is a fantastic orator, I don't deny that, but you can also see that the implementation of his oratory has been rather pathetic.
But his popularity keeps getting higher and higher despite that.
Well, the old line that the people get the leader they deserve applies, but when you point out to them the actual consequences for their own lives of voting for this party and the consequences they have lived with, I genuinely believe there will be a changed reaction. I think part of the problem is many people who've been unhappy and frustrated under the BJP government have not allowed themselves to feel that we represented a credible, viable alternative. If we can convince them that we are sufficiently effective, strong, nimble, and ready to take on Mr. Modi, then I think a lot of the people who are not so happy with Mr. Modi will not hold their noses and vote for the BJP anymore. They'll come back to Congress.
The man sitting in front of me is really saying that you can cut Modi's image down to size?
I think I'm trying to say that we can translate Modi's failures into votes for our party and for the opposition.
You haven't succeeded as a party in doing that for 8 years.
And that's one of the reasons I am the candidate of change.
Shashi Tharoor, thank you very much indeed, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Karan.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.